Good morning, friends. Thanks for joining us on what I have called Lame Duck Sunday. That's right. You heard me right. Lame Duck Sunday. Now, the phrase lame duck was first used in the 18th century to describe someone who has defaulted on their loans, was unable to pay their debts. They were called a lame duck. Lame duck literally means a waterfowl who is injured, thus cannot keep up with the flock, thus is more prone to predation. Lame duck. But it was in 1863, right here in the good old US of A, that the phrase lame duck kind of took on its current meaning as it was applied to the political realm. We currently have what is known as a lame duck president. That is a president who's still president, but will be out of office in January 20th to be exact. And the phrase lame duck is given to a president who is only a one-term president or a president second term, but who's done, who's definitely leaving, but for those 2 months, November and December, before the new president comes in, they're still kind of in there, and it's in an in-between phase where their purpose is less, their impact is decreased, their ability to affect change has pretty much fallen by the wayside because everybody knows that they're soon out the door and somebody else is new. And so the trust that the people have in the policies in these last 2 months is diminished because who knows what will happen in January in regard to these 2 months of policy. Lame duck. So happy Lame Duck Sunday. Statistics tell us, and my experience tells me, that this Sunday each year in the calendar is the least attended Sunday of them all. Of the 52 Sundays in a year, we know factually that after Christmas, the excitement of Christmas and the holiday season, before the excitement of a new year, that one Sunday between, people just check out. And thus I've titled today, this day, Lame Duck Sunday. Now, the whole concept of lame duck on this Lame Duck Sunday reminds me a bit of a movie that we rewatched this past week. I'm sure like many of you, you've watched a ton of movies during COVID. In fact, we took count in my home. Since March, we watched 2,522 movies. Fact is an exact number. Well, my older boys and I introduced our girls who are younger this past week to two of my favorites, Gladiator and Braveheart. In the context of lame duck, where impact is less, trust is a little lower, purpose seems to be a little, I'm reminded of something William Wallace said, Braveheart, the night before he went to his demise. If you've seen the movie, you're familiar with the clip. The princess, who through a series of events has fallen in love with William Wallace, is fearful for the suffering and the torture that he is going to face on the morrow. So she brings to him a vial of pain-numbing medicine. And he says, I don't need that because I need my wits about me. And she says, I'm scared you're going to die. And he says, now this is a direct quote from William Wallace, he says, all men die, but not all men truly live. Seems to me in the voice of William Wallace, I hear the echo on this Lame Duck Sunday and a cry from him to all of us to not fall prey to living a lame duck life. A lame duck life where, like the lame duck president, where you just kind of ho-hum, just kind of getting through it till it's over with no real drive, with no real adventure, with no real purpose, just lame duck living. Now, it's easy to fall into this lame duck living, and I'm guaranteeing you that there are people who are hearing my voice and watching me online right now who have fallen into the lame duck life. How does it happen? I'm reminded of when my dad taught me how to drive back in 87, when I was 16, 1987, that's a long time ago. I was rocking the mullet in those days, sitting in our 1971 International Harvester Scout. We lived way up in the UP, and right across the street from our house was thousands of acres of state land, undeveloped, just had these 2 tracks. And my dad took me out there with the stick shift scout and showed me how to drive and taught me. And these wonderful 2-tracks, man, I could get in a good rhythm of driving. But if I wasn't mindful, and if I didn't watch where I was going and take the appropriate turn off, the rhythm of driving on 2-tracks became dangerous and sticky ruts, where the rhythm of driving on smooth 2-tracks, they went really deep, and that center section was really big, and the rhythm became a rut. And it was nearly impossible to get out of the rut. In fact, what was needed was drastic action. And my dad said, you just got to turn it. We had this old beat up thing that I was telling you about, this 71 International Harvester. And he said, you just got to take a drastic action, because if you tried to subtly get out of the rut, you would fall back into it. And he said, you just got to yank the wheel. So you had to yank the wheel to get out of the rut, to get back into rhythm. I'm telling you, it happens so easily because we find the rhythms of life, if unguarded, can become ruts. And our impact decreases. Our joy and zest goes down. And like a lame duck president on a lame duck Sunday, we just go through life ho-hum. Well, on this lame duck Sunday, I want to offer to you the cure to keep your rhythms from becoming ruts. I want to offer you the antidote of lame duck living so that you can prove William Wallace wrong. Sure, you're going to die, but I would love for you, as would you, to really live. And so here's the cure to lame duck living. Did you get it? It's our foundational value at the river. This represents God. This represents you. Boom. The whole cure, the way to get out of the rut of life, the way to live exciting, adventurous, purposeful, impactful life is to walk closely with the Lord. I'm thinking of Abraham. Before he was Abraham, his life was peaceful and chill, out in the middle of nowhere. His name was Abram. Abram had an encounter with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And when Abram got close to God, his life took a turn for the adventurous, nary the crazy. It wasn't just Abram who became Abraham. It was good old Moses. He had a bit of a tumultuous upbringing, right? Some crazy things going on in Egypt, but he left Egypt as a middle-aged man, about 40, and moved to the desert and became a shepherd where he had a wife and a family, lived with his in-laws. Things were relaxed, peaceful, rhythmic for Moses. But you know the story, don't you? He had an encounter with God, and after encountering God, God shook up his rhythmic, rutted life and sent him back, and his life became crazy. It became inconvenient. It became wild, and it became wonderfully impactful. And the impact that Moses had today is still echoing throughout the ages because he had an encounter with the king, and his life was shaken up, and he lived an adventurous life. But it wasn't just people in the Old Testament who had an impact or an encounter with the King of Kings whose life became crazy and wonderfully adventurous. It wasn't just our Old Testament friends who shook off the lame duck life after encountering God. It's our friends in the New Testament as well. Of course, Mary, right? We just celebrated the birth of Jesus last week. Mary, young, probably anywhere from 12 to 15-year-old girl, different cultural times back then, just living her life normally, ho-hum, rhythmically, maybe ruttedly. But the angel of the Lord came. She had an encounter with the King of Kings, and God shook her life up, and it became inconvenient. It became wild. It became something that was scary and unsure. But after her encounter with the Lord, she had impact that will last for eternity. And what about her husband-to-be? Good old Joseph, right? Joe was expecting to have a normal, rhythmic life, easy and simple. Just go to work, make your chairs, do your carpenter thing, marry a young woman named Mary. Nice and normal. But he had an encounter with God through the angel, and God entered into his normal life and said, no, I got adventures for you. And the adventures Joseph entered into shook his life up, was inconvenience to him, but he was able to father in an adoptive way the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, and the Messiah. When Joseph had an encounter with God, his life got full. I'm thinking of the 12. I mean, you can read the story in the scriptures of all 12 disciples. They had normal, everyday lives, just going to work, doing their thing, whether they were fishermen, tax collectors, doctors, whatever, just kind of going through life. Ho-hum. But when they had an encounter with Jesus, their normal, everyday life was turned upside down, and they lived from that moment on a life of adventure and crazy impact. Well, what about the Apostle Paul? Right? Life was good for him. He was well respected, a leader in the early church setting, the synagogue setting. He was a Jew respected by all until he had an encounter with God. And when he had an encounter with God, everything that was normal and routine in his life was turned upside down, dumped out the door, and he was given a crazy, inconvenient, wild life filled with significance and impact. He died, but before he died, he really lived. Any of these people in the scriptures, when they had an encounter with the Lord, you cannot describe their life as a lame duck life, just kind of getting through to the end of it. Here's what I know about you people. You desire to have impact. You don't want to live a lame duck life. And so I'm encouraging you, first of all, to just take a little bit of moments here, a few moments, and look on the inside and examine yourself and be honest with yourself. It's one of the hardest things to do, is to be honest with ourselves. We can clearly look at the faults of others, but it's hard to look at our own. Examine your life, and if you have close people in your life, ask them to help you see, is your life marked with adventure and joy and purpose and impact, or are you living a bit of a lame duck life right now? I'm thinking of some big words here. Way back when Jesus, ascended into heaven and the church first formed, the church of Jesus first formed, the early church, here's some big words for you. They were informed by their Christology, and out of their Christology, they developed their missiology, and out of their Christology and missiology, they developed their ecclesiology. What the heck does that mean? Their Christology was their understanding of Jesus. They looked to Jesus first before they developed anything, before they thought anything, before they decided on a course of action. They looked to Jesus. They saw what Jesus did. They read what Jesus did. And out of their understanding of Jesus, Christology, their missiology was developed. That is, their purpose, their mission in life came out of understanding that Jesus came to set the prisoners free, that Jesus loved the underdog, that Jesus loved the lost, the least, and the lonely, that Jesus was on mission. So the church, out of their understanding of Christology, developed a missiology. And their missiology, what they did, developed their ecclesiology. That is, their understanding of church. All the gatherings of God's people in the early church was meant to support the missiology of everyone who followed Christ. The church's purpose was to engage the believer to live out their faith like Jesus, to bring the love to a broken world, to bring healing to a broken world, to bring Jesus to people who did not know him. Their Christology informed their missiology, which informed their ecclesiology. Today, it's a bit different. Today, at least in the American church, it's become normative for the ecclesiology, the way we understand church, to inform our Christology. Out of what we think the church ought to be, something for me, and me only, and my needs, please have this song and that type of message. please have this type of thing and that type of thing. Our understanding of ecclesiology impacts our Christology. Well, Jesus is for me. Now, that's true. He is for you, but he's for you for the sake of others and your own freedom. But when ecclesiology is all, what's the right word I'm thinking of here? When it's all consumerism, we began to look at Jesus as kind of our personal puff daddy in the sky. So today, our ecclesiology, which is off, informs our Christology, which is also off, and we don't even have a missiology. We co-opt our missiology. That is to say, we pay others to do it. Today, ecclesiology shapes our Christology, and we just co-opt our missiology. Now, I know you folks at the river, you want to have impact, but it's difficult to have impact. I know you guys want to give, and you're generous. When I posted that we have a need right over behind this camera in the west side, we have a need to supply some things for our stay-at-home shelter, our warming shelter for our friends who are homeless. Man, you guys came out in droves. I can't tell you how many days I came home after we put a little Amazon wish list together, and there were packages stacked up in front of my door. It was embarrassing. I didn't know what the poor UPS guy was thinking of us or what our neighbors thought. Took several trips in my Jeep to get all the stuff over here. Coats, hats, gloves, socks, all kinds of things. And the amount of coffee and creamer and cups that came in inundated us. And I was overwhelmed by the blessing that your generosity was. And I want you to know I was pleased and proud of you guys for pitching in. That's so awesome. A few weeks after that, I made a post on Facebook saying there's a member of our community who is in a bit of financial pinch, and their place of residence, the community that they live in, told them that they needed to fix the skirting around their trailer, otherwise they're going to be evicted. And so I put out a request. Hey, we need some help, somebody who's handy to go and fix this thing. And whereas when I asked people to send goods or maybe send some financial gifts, you guys were so generous, and I'm so pleased with that. When I was asking somebody not to send any money, but to send yourself to go somewhere, to you actually go somewhere, to actually have your Christology shape your missiology, for about 3 days I got zero response. Zero. Now, this isn't a shaming thing, but it's a real thing. It's so much easier to co-opt our missiology, to send money or stuff to others to do it. It's so much harder to understand that Christ himself went, and we ourselves sometimes need to go. It's harder to actually go ourselves. Now, I can tell you right now that there was one friend here of the river who responded and chose the non-lame duck life after about 3 days of me getting nothing. This person said, I'll go. An apprentice carpenter went over with a friend and fixed the skirting on this trailer. And that, my friends, is living a life of significance and purpose, walking with the King, living out your life, going to a place you're not comfortable going to, but in so going, experiencing impact beyond what the rhythmic, rutted life offers. I know you people, and your hearts are good, and I believe you want impact. I'm telling you, the way to truly live and to say no to the lame duck life is to walk closely with the Lord and pay attention to the prompts that he lives, so that you can put yourself, you can allow the Spirit to put yourself in uncomfortable, adventurous situations, because you were made for adventurous living and not lame duck living. I'm thinking of another story I heard just this week of a young man who went to Chicago to celebrate during the holiday season and was walking around. But he knew that Chicago was filled with people who are homeless, kind of like Kalamazoo. And so before he even walked up and down that Miracle Mile, he went to Target and bought some gift cards. And when people approached him, he knew that handing out money wasn't necessarily a wise thing, that sometimes helping hurts. So he wanted to be wise in how he helped. And knowing that the adventurous life was one of giving and sacrifice, he began passing out gift cards to fast food restaurants so that these homeless folks could have food. Now, he tells the story of some of them got a little upset and said, I don't want your gift card, I want money. And he said, no, here's a gift card. That to me is an example, friends, of what adventurous living is when you walk closely with the King. You were made for more adventure than you're currently living. You, like Abraham, like Moses, like Mary, like Joseph, like the 12, like Paul, were created for impact that was significant and large. And it will only happen when you do something drastic to get out of your rut and live a life of adventure so that you can prove William Wallace wrong, that you will die, but before you die, you can say, yep, I really lived. Now, on this Lame Duck Sunday, at risk of sounding melodramatic, I'm going to say this. This isn't over-exaggerated preacher hyperbole. This is a true statement. The world needs you to shake off the rut and to live adventurously. There are people in your world who are literally dying on the inside, waiting for you to shake off the rut and to live adventurously. You weren't made to live a lame duck life. So imagine with me, we're all in glory now. This earth has passed away, and we're sitting up there telling stories. And we tell the story of Abraham, of how he shook off the comfort and leaving comfort behind, man, he moved to significant. We tell the story of Moses, how he too, after encountering God, left the comfort and moved to the crazy. We talk about Mary, Joseph, the 12, and Paul, all of them who after encountering the King of Kings, shook off the comfortable and moved into the crazy. And then after we tell their story, we tell your story. Yeah, what about Bob? Remember Bob? Man, he shook off the comfortable, lived the crazy, and had crazy impact. What about Karen? Remember Karen? She had a comfortable life, but she shook it off and lived the crazy and had an impact that was wild. What about, this is where your name would be shared by the angels and the cloud of witnesses who have gone before us and with us. And they tell your story, how you began to shake off the comfortable draw of the rut and chose to get out of the rut to live a life of adventure. And then they'll tell your story of how you turned your back on a lame duck life and lived a life of purpose and significant. Happy Lame Duck Sunday, people. Starting next Sunday, we're going to get back into what is known as expository preaching. The past month or so in our Advent series and then in this Lame Duck series, we've been preaching in a way that those smart people call topical preaching. It's a beautiful way to preach. There's nothing wrong with it. It's topical. It comes from Scripture, right? But our go-to pitch is expository preaching, where we take a particular text and we simply walk through that text. So starting next Sunday, the first Sunday of 2021, we're going to be in the book of Ephesians, and we're just going to walk through the entire text slowly and surely. Probably going to take us 32 years. Who knows? It took us, I think, 3 years, a little over 3 years. Is that right? Yeah, to get through the Gospel of John, which is longer than Ephesians. Ephesians has 6 chapters. So you might want to get a little heads up. Just read through the book of Ephesians a little bit to familiarize yourself with it. Next week, we start the book of Ephesians. Have a good week. See you next week. Peace.